The nonchalant man doesn't chase, and that's exactly why she runs after him. You see, most men operate from a place of need. They crave validation, approval, and affection. But the nonchalant man walks differently. He moves with the world, not against it. He doesn't orbit around women. They end up orbiting around him. His lack of over-interest isn't an act. It's a reflection of internal abundance. He already feels full. He's not thirsty for connection because his sense of self isn't tied to whether or not a woman desires him. And this is precisely what twists a woman's perception. Her mind starts asking, why isn't he trying to impress me? Why doesn't he need me like other men do? That confusion, that's the spark of obsession. Women are biologically wired to pursue mystery, to unlock the unknown. And the nonchalant man is the greatest mystery of all. His detachment isn't coldness, it's power. It's a quiet defiance of the game she's used to playing. Every woman has tested men with silence, with mood swings, with seductive withdrawal, just to see if he will break. But the nonchalant man doesn't flinch. He doesn't take the bait. She pulls back, and he lets her go. That lack of reaction isn't apathy, it's mastery. It's the unshakable awareness that her emotions are hers to manage, not his to solve. And in that space, she begins to project onto him all the emotional depth she longs for. He becomes the blank canvas for her fantasies, not because he feeds her illusions, but because he refuses to destroy them. When a man doesn't need to talk just to fill silence, it speaks volumes. Women fall in love with that calm, confident stillness, the kind that holds power without needing to prove it. The nonchalant man's words are calculated, deliberate, and rare. He doesn't ramble. He doesn't overshare. He doesn't try to emotionally bond by pouring his soul out on the first few dates. And that restraint, that control, it's magnetic. She starts to chase conversation with him. She wants to hear more, learn more, understand what's going on behind those guarded eyes. But he only reveals what he wants, when he wants. And in this tight grip of emotional scarcity, she finds herself addicted, not to what he says, but to what he withholds. Most men don't realize how loudly insecurity speaks. When a man double texts, over-explains, justifies, or apologizes for being himself, it screams. It tells the woman, I'm scared to lose your attention, and once she senses that fear, she loses respect. But the nonchalant man has none of that. He doesn't apologize for his truth. He lets a message go unanswered. He takes hours, sometimes days, to reply, not out of pettiness, but because he's genuinely not prioritizing her over his mission. And paradoxically, that absence makes her obsess. She reads the silence, overanalyzes it, texts her friends about it. And in that overthinking spiral, she attaches. Not because he said the right things, but because he made her feel his emotional independence. When you're nonchalant, you own the frame. You don't get sucked into her world. She gets pulled into yours. And that's why women fall. They're tired of being the prize. They're exhausted from men who worship the ground they walk on. What they truly crave is a man who builds his own world and invites her in if she proves she's worthy. The nonchalant man doesn't hand over emotional security like candy. His affection is earned. His time is valuable. His attention is a privilege, not a gift. And that makes her work harder. She dresses better, speaks softer, tries harder. Not because he demands it, but because she senses the unspoken standard. She realizes he doesn't need her, and that's exactly why she starts to want him. She wants a man who's emotionally composed, and the nonchalant man is the definition of composed. While most men crumble under pressure, reacting to her tone, her tests, her passive-aggressive digs, the nonchalant man simply doesn't engage. He listens, he watches, but he doesn't flinch. His ability to stay calm while she gets emotional tells her something no words can. I am the mountain, you are the wind. And that contrast triggers a feminine urge to submit, because deep down, she doesn't want a man who competes with her mood. She wants a man who contains it. Not by dominating her, but by remaining rooted in himself, no matter what storm she brings. That stability, that stillness, that's the safety she never knew she was looking for. Scarcity breeds value, and the nonchalant man is rare. He's not scrolling Instagram liking every model's photo. He's not watching her story the second it goes live. He's not begging for attention, playing passive-aggressive games, or making cryptic posts, hoping she'll notice. He simply lives, he works, he trains, he builds. and in doing so, he creates a vacuum, a space where she feels his absence deeply, and that absence starts to define her perception of him. What is he doing? Who is he with? Why hasn't he texted me? Those questions aren't just thoughts. They become emotional anchors. They keep her thinking about him, dreaming about him, fantasizing about what could be. All because he didn't try to make her feel anything. She felt it all on her own. The nonchalant man is not reckless. He's precise. He doesn't ignore women to play games. He simply prioritizes himself. He doesn't give attention freely, but when he does, it's powerful, intentional. He knows the power of contrast. One deep look after hours of silence, one compliment after a week of teasing, one night of closeness after days of distance. That contrast creates intensity. Women don't remember consistency, they remember moments. And the nonchalant man creates moments because he understands tension. He lets silence stretch. He allows mystery to deepen. And when he finally breaks the tension, it's unforgettable. That one moment of warmth from a cold man hits harder than a lifetime of affection from a clingy one. Control is the ultimate seduction, and the nonchalant man never loses it. He doesn't rush to impress. He doesn't feel the need to prove his worth. He knows who he is, and he lets women figure it out slowly. This triggers a woman's natural desire to discover and decode. She starts to invest emotionally, not because he's manipulating her, but because he's offering no emotional shortcut. She has to earn access to his mind. She has to interpret his silences, and as she projects meaning into his minimalism, she begins to feel attached. She's not falling in love with him, she's falling in love with the meaning she's assigned to him, and that's where the obsession is born. In the quiet spaces where she makes him more than he's even revealed. The nonchalant man has options, not just women, but in life, and she knows it, she feels it, she sees it in the way he moves, the way he talks, the way he values his time. He's not trying to win her, he's deciding if she's worth the investment. That subtle shift in power flips her entire emotional script, because most men pedestalize her, most men crave her approval, but he doesn't. He respects her, but he doesn't need her. And that's the deepest form of masculine energy, to be open to connection, yet totally unattached to outcome. That energy, it's rare, it's unforgettable. And once she feels it, she compares every man to him, because nothing feels more intoxicating to a woman than the attention of a man who doesn't have to give it. She falls in love with the man who doesn't over-explain himself. The nonchalant man doesn't feel the need to justify his decisions, apologize for his priorities, or decode his personality like a cheap self-help guide. He lets her wonder, he lets her feel the mystery, and in that uncertainty, her imagination begins to run wild. Why? Because her emotions are stimulated more by what's missing than what's given. A man who constantly talks, constantly shares, constantly validates, he leaves nothing for her to chase. But the man who stays slightly out of emotional reach, not out of cruelty but inner alignment, becomes an unsolved puzzle. And nothing draws a woman in deeper than a mystery she believes she's close to solving. She falls in love with the man who never negotiates his self-respect. The nonchalant man doesn't beg. He doesn't plead, he doesn't chase after being disrespected. He has lines that cannot be crossed, and the more she tests those lines, with attitude, with passive jabs, with delayed replies, the more he calmly detaches. That calm detachment terrifies her, because she realizes his love will never come at the cost of his pride. Most men crumble when they fear losing a woman, but the nonchalant man knows if it costs him his peace, if it costs him his integrity, then it was never love. And in a twisted way, that firm boundary creates emotional safety for her. She may not admit it, but she respects him more because of it. And respect for women is often the door to love. She falls for how emotionally invincible he is. He doesn't react to emotional bait. If she withholds attention, flirts with others, or tries to make him jealous, he doesn't bite. Not because he's unaware, but because he's indifferent to low-level games. His sense of self-worth doesn't waver based on female validation. That immunity makes her feel exposed, because every other man would have reacted. Every other man would have asked, "What's wrong?" or "Why are you being distant?" But he doesn't. He just continues being him, and suddenly, she's faced with her own emotional immaturity. That reflection, that emotional contrast, that's what makes her feel something deeper. Not just desire, but admiration. And that's what makes her return. She falls in love with the man who doesn't fall in love with her first. That's the paradox. The moment you want her too much, she pulls away. But the man who genuinely enjoys his life, regardless of her presence, becomes the gravitational pull she can't escape. He doesn't play games. He simply lives in such a powerful masculine state that she naturally wants to orbit him. He doesn't try to win her heart. He builds a world so magnetic, she wants to be part of it. Women don't fall for men who chase. They fall for men who create. And the nonchalant man is too busy building his legacy to beg for romance. That's why she tries to earn his attention. Not because he asked her to, but because his energy made her want to. She falls for how free he makes her feel. This is the hidden layer. While the clingy man smothers her with love, that feels like a leash, the nonchalant man gives her emotional freedom. He's not checking her phone. He's not interrogating her about her past. He's not obsessing over where she is or who she's with. That emotional spaciousness makes her feel like a woman again, not a prisoner in a man's insecurity. And in that freedom, something ironic happens. She chooses him even more. Because he doesn't try to control her, she controls herself. Because he doesn't need to possess her, she wants to belong to him, not out of fear, but out of choice. And nothing is more powerful than a woman who chooses to submit to a man who never demanded it. She falls for the man whose life is already full. A nonchalant man doesn't wait for a woman to complete his world. He already has purpose, friends, discipline, fitness, money, passion. She becomes a cherry on top, not the cake. And that changes everything. She doesn't feel like his savior. She feels like his addition. This difference subtly shifts the power dynamic. Instead of her being in control of his emotions, she's fighting to qualify for his time. The clingy man sacrifices his hobbies, skips the gym, delays his mission to spend more time with her, and in doing so, he sends a message, "You are my world." That sounds romantic, but to her subconscious, it screams dependence. But the nonchalant man's world is already in motion, and she feels lucky just to be part of the ride. She falls for his lack of emotional volatility. He doesn't explode. He doesn't cry in front of her every week. He doesn't spiral into desperate texts if she pulls away. His emotional world is a calm lake, not a stormy sea. That emotional consistency grounds her. It makes her feel safe, because women live in emotional storms all the time. Inside their minds, in society, in relationships. What they crave isn't more chaos, it's masculine calm, and the nonchalant man becomes that anchor. His silence isn't emptiness, it's depth. His calm isn't coldness, it's power. And slowly, she realizes that being around him makes her feel more like herself, more feminine, more centered, more alive. She falls in love with how he doesn't flinch when challenged. Whether it's her attitude, her tests, her little sarcastic digs, he doesn't lose composure, he doesn't snap, he doesn't even get defensive, he just looks at her, and sometimes he even laughs. That's when she knows she can't manipulate him, she can't shake him, and more than anything, she respects him for it, because in that moment, she realizes he's not playing on her emotional field, he's playing on his own. While most men get baited into proving their worth, the nonchalant man simply continues being himself. He doesn't argue, he doesn't debate, he doesn't perform, and that refusal to participate in drama, that's the moment she feels she's met a real man. She falls for how he never makes her the center of his world. At first, this infuriates her. She wants more attention, more messages, more investment. But as time passes, she finds herself thinking about him more than any man who ever obsessed over her. Because the nonchalant man gives her just enough, then disappears back into his mission. He doesn't orbit her, she orbits him. He becomes the sun, and like gravity, she feels pulled into his presence. He may not say the sweetest things, he may not chase her down, but when he does give her attention, it means something. It's rare, it's earned, and that makes her treasure it more than any constant stream of validation from other men. She falls for the emotional delay. The nonchalant man never gives it all up front. She has to wonder if he likes her. She has to guess how much he cares. She finds herself analyzing his silences, replaying his words, decoding his expressions. And in that overthinking, her emotional investment skyrockets. It's not manipulation, it's masculine restraint. Because unlike the desperate man who overshares his heart before she's even earned it, the nonchalant man lets things unfold slowly. He lets mystery do the work. He doesn't try to impress, he just exists. And that stillness, that masculine pause, that's what stirs her emotions more than any grand gesture ever could. She falls in love with what he doesn't say. And that's why, even if she walks away, she always comes back. She falls in love with the challenge he represents. Most men fold too easily, giving her everything she asks for, adjusting their personality, opinions, and priorities just to keep her happy. But the nonchalant man, he doesn't bend to her expectations. He's not rude or dismissive. He simply doesn't compromise who he is to gain favor. He remains grounded in his own reality, and whether she admits it or not, that makes him thrilling. He becomes something to solve, someone to win over. Women don't want easy. They want to feel like they've earned your attention, and when they do, they guard it fiercely, because nothing makes her fall harder than a man who doesn't need her, but still chooses her. She falls for how he keeps his power. The nonchalant man never hands over his emotional control. He doesn't reveal every thought, doesn't expose his deepest insecurities, and doesn't chase reassurance. He remains a mystery, a man with layers she's desperate to uncover. And in that process, she starts falling in love with the idea of discovering him. She romanticizes his silence. She feels privileged when he shares even a small part of himself. And the moment she senses he's holding back, her curiosity and emotional investment explode. Because unlike most men who hand over their soul on a silver platter, the nonchalant man keeps parts of himself just out of reach. And that subtle tension is addictive. She falls in love with the fact that he doesn't fall in love easily. It's not that he's incapable of love, it's that he values it too much to give it away to anyone who's simply available. He's discerning, selective, measured. And in a world full of men who get swept up in infatuation just because a woman is pretty, his ability to stay grounded makes him stand out. It makes her feel like she has to work for it. And when she does, and he finally lets her in, she doesn't just feel loved, she feels chosen. That kind of love isn't forgettable, it's transformative. And that's what makes her fall harder than she ever expected. She falls because he doesn't flinch at her beauty. Most men crumble under her looks. They trip over compliments, stare too long, and treat her like a goddess simply because of her appearance. But the nonchalant man sees beyond the surface. He may acknowledge her beauty, but he doesn't worship it. And that throws her off. It makes her doubt her power. And in that doubt, she becomes intrigued. She begins to wonder why he doesn't treat her like every other man. And that curiosity turns into obsession, because a man who isn't captivated by her body forces her to bring something more. He makes her dig deeper. And that feeling of being seen as a person, not a prize, makes her crave him like no one else. And finally, she falls in love because he doesn't need her to feel complete. He could walk away at any time. He's not desperate, he's not afraid to be alone. His life would go on without her, fulfilled, focused, and free. And paradoxically, that's what makes her cling to him, because there's something intoxicating about a man who chooses you but doesn't need you. It's rare, it's powerful, it flips the entire dynamic. She's not in control, he is. And that energy, the energy of a man who walks in purpose, remains emotionally centered, and gives love without losing himself, is the exact thing women fall in love with. Not because he said the perfect pickup line, but because his presence was louder than any words.